Within an hour of that announcement, we were starting to get cancellations. So we were all huddled around mobile phones watching that press conference from the Formula Ones in Melbourne. So that cancelled that event and everything else. And that was Friday afternoon. And within an hour, we had calls cancelling upcoming work. And we didn't think immediately everything would go for the year. We thought, well, okay, these events in the near future are cancelling, but surely Vivid won't cancel, and surely the Sydney Royal Easter Show won't cancel. But all within the following week, they announced they were all cancelling as well. And that's within that week is when we lost 99% of our work and millions of dollars worth of revenue.
If you've watched a contestant leap off one of those dizzying columns on Australian Ninja Warrior, or watched the opening ceremony extravaganza unfold at the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, or if you've glimpsed Sydney City awash with brightly coloured lights during Vivid Festival, then you've witnessed the work of Jeremy Fleming's company Stagekings. So when those huge events started collapsing during the COVID shutdown, it seemed inevitable Stagekings would follow. Luckily, Jeremy Fleming plucked a genius idea for a business pivot out of the back pocket of his King G's, and Stagekings would go from building the sets for huge events to making flat-pack desks. On Curveball, it's the ultimate business U-turn. You might be sitting at a makeshift desk at home right now, or perhaps you had to fashion up somewhere for the kids to sit while they were doing schoolwork from home. That's where IsoKing came in, shipping simple, flat-pack desks to your home right at the height of the pandemic, a real gap in the market. But this business didn't even exist a year ago, and it rose out of the ashes of a devastating collapse for Jeremy Fleming's original business, creating staging for huge events like the Commonwealth Games, the Formula One in Melbourne, and the TV set of Ninja Warrior. Curveball's the podcast where you discover how leaders have risen to a challenge they couldn't foresee. And Jeremy Fleming of Stagekings, and now the leader of IsoKing, couldn't be a better example of how to adapt in these very chaotic times. Jeremy, welcome.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks so much for having me.
Tell me about Stagekings, your first business. How long have you and your wife Tabitha been running that business?
We started Stagekings in 2015 with the view of bringing these themed and decorated structures to the event market here in Australia. So things you see overseas like Tomorrowland and these, the big themed experience-based stages and structures. So 2015 we started that with that in mind and grew very quickly. And some of the events you mentioned, it's actually, we've got to pinch ourselves that we have done those in our short time, but that was how Stagekings kicked off and grew very quickly.
And how did you come into that business? I understand you were in scaffolding.
Yeah, I'm actually a bridge carpenter by trade, and that led to building scaffolding on bridges, and that led to me working for a scaffold manufacturer out of Germany, a company called Layer. And so a big market for that scaffold is staging and event structures, and so I was selling a lot of that stuff to those event companies, which led me to think, I think it could be done better in Australia. Everything looked very similar, and having worked in Germany and seeing what they were doing throughout Europe gave us the idea to kick it off here.
And what did Tabitha, your wife, what was the expertise that she brought to the business?
Well, she'd been in the record industry for a lot of years. She's worked for a lot of the big record labels, and her big thing is that she runs all the back end, the important stuff, HR and back end, and she just knows the music industry very well. So it's kind of a nice sort of a joint industry there.
Can you describe for me one of your sets? Like, pick your favourite one, because I think people are, when we talk about stages, people imagining just literally a stage, whereas what you're talking about is these huge, big brand activations or pop-up stages that happen. Can you pick a favourite and describe it for me?
Gosh, there's so many amazing ones. You mentioned the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony. The Edinburgh military tattoo was one that sticks out that we did not long before COVID. So that was a replica of the Edinburgh Castle we built in ANZ Stadium. And that was the full width of the stadium and up nearly 30 metres high. And if you saw it from anywhere in the stadium, it just looked exactly like Edinburgh Castle. So that's a structure. And as far as a stage goes, you're right. People see these big steel roofs with lights and screens and things hanging off them. But what we make is more themed structures. So if you go to one of our shows, a stage might be a 60 metre wide by 30 metre high lion, a three-dimensional lion with flames and water features and all these amazing, lots of lasers usually.
And where do you come up with the ideas? Is that up to you guys, or is the brand or company that have engaged you come to you with a brief?
It all depends. Sometimes people ask us to come up with something, or they'll come to us with a mood board and get us to design something up. And we've got a couple of amazing designers in-house that can run with any ideas, and it blows my mind the kind of things they come up with. They're very creative.
So everything's going swimmingly for Stagekings. You've been in the business for about 5 years and you've scaled it quite well. You're going well, aren't you? Big contracts. I mean, the Commonwealth Games, that's a huge contract. That's millions of dollars, right? Yeah,
the huge contract. That was, and to beat a lot of international players for that was amazing for a 3-year-old company. So we were, going very nicely.
Then on Friday the 13th of March 2020, the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced measures that of course led to the immediate shutdown of your entire industry. When did the gravity of that announcement hit you?
Within an hour of that announcement, we were started to get cancellations. So we were all huddled around mobile phones watching that press conference from the Formula Ones in Melbourne. And so that cancelled that event and everything else, and that was Friday afternoon, and within an hour we had calls cancelling upcoming work, and we didn't think immediately everything would go for the year. We thought, okay, these events in the near future are cancelling, but surely Vivid won't cancel, and surely the Sydney Royal Easter Show won't cancel, but that all within the following week they announced they were all cancelling as well, and that's within that week is when we lost 99% of our work and millions of dollars worth of revenue.
As you mentioned, millions of dollars, a staging business, very expensive to run, a lot of overhead, a lot of equipment. And if there's a quick collapse of those lucrative jobs, what would that mean for you and Tabitha personally?
We immediately we freaked out, and I was sitting at home saying, I can't see how we can get through this. We did think we were going to lose everything. We thought within a very short amount of time, we'd calculated we could last 4 months. If we were to cut everything back, reduce rent, reduce repayments, we could last 4 months. With no income. And so we really thought we'd lose the house. My parents live in Hervey Bay, and we called them and said there's a very real potential that we'll need to move up there with you. And it was heartbreaking. We thought that it was all going to go.
What was that conversation like between you and Tabitha late at night, Friday the 13th of March? You've gone into sort of damage control or kind of crisis management that day, but that night when the two of you went to bed, tell me about that conversation.
Well, there's an element of panic, I think. That heavy feeling you get in your chest when you know something's wrong and there's nothing you can do about it. It's we were worried about the house. The kids are there, but we always thought that even if we were to lose all of this, we've still got our health. The kids are healthy. We will move to Hervey Bay, and we'll be okay.
Watch the whales.
So we tried to. Yeah, that's right. We tried to really focus on that, but it was a horrible feeling. Yeah.
And what's that next week like for you? Can you take me through the timeline? You wake up on Saturday morning. What do you do for those first few days?
So the first thing we looked at was finances and what outgoings we had and anything that we could reduce, because it was the Monday that everything sort of went. But Friday was a lot of calls, and then by Monday it was basically everything. It was funny. We were just talking about this again the other day. There was actually an event exhibition in Sydney, NTech. Where all the event people get together, and lighting companies and screen companies, and we went to that. It must have been on the Monday following, and it was the most depressing environment you could have possibly been in. And we walked through that exhibition because everyone was in the same boat, and everyone that was visiting the exhibition was in the same boat, and it was conversation after conversation about everything's gone. What are we going to do? And all these every company in there had lost everything, and it was so depressing. And I said to Mick, our head of production, that we'll talk more about later, I said, mate, we got to get out of here. This is horrible. And so we went over to the pub actually over at Moore Park there at the entertainment quarter, and that's where I said to Mick, mate, there's a very real possibility here that we'll lose the house and we'll have to wind everything up. And it's just heartbreaking, It was really horrible. I'll never forget that feeling.
Then, though, you pulled out a napkin and you started brainstorming. What were some of the initial ideas that you came up with of ways to, take the company in a different direction or keep people employed?
Yeah, well, Mick and I started working on that immediately. Even on the Friday, we started to think of what else we could do. And we'd seen what they were doing overseas. We kept an eye on all of that, and we'd seen that there were these pop-up testing facilities and waiting rooms, COVID-safe waiting rooms. And so Mick has a contact in the health department, and we got on the phone to her on the Monday, and we drew full plans of how we could make these structures out of scaffold and truss and event equipment. And everything it needed to be, wipeable surfaces and seats locked in place 1.5 metres apart. So we learned a lot about that very quickly, and so we have those plans still saved on the Dropbox.
But you know what is so fascinating to me about this? A, it's a genius idea. B, you come up with it really, really quickly. And C, you're drawing plans while you're on the phone to the bank saying we need to default on a payment. I can't get a sense of did you guys not sleep for 72 hours? No,
well, we really didn't. There was a lot of sleepless nights and just a lot of work, a lot of focusing on what we could still do. And we did. We drew all that. We organised a meeting with our local mayor down in the Sutherland Shire, and we got in contact with every single hospital in the Sydney region, and sent them the plans and we really were doing as much as we could, all the while talking to our landlord saying, can we give you a half payment this month, and trying to reduce all our outgoings, and so this was very early days too, so even landlords hadn't had it was the first week of anything like this for them too, so that no one had any sort of roadmaps in place. There was no plans on how to deal with this thing. So we were just trying to be on the front foot and call the banks and call the landlords, and all the while trying to think of anything else.
And did you have some other ideas or just the hospital tents?
Well, I had an idea. It didn't go very far, but I had an idea to build little exercise, home ninja warrior courses, let's call them, in people's backyards. But we didn't go very far with
See, I would have backed that in for the win, because everyone wanted something like that at the time, right?
Yeah, well, once everyone locked down, we thought of that again. We were too busy with everything else.
But nothing was quite landing. You couldn't get traction with either the home Ninja Warrior set or your hospital tent ideas. It was almost too early for anyone to act on. So just 7 days after the closure of events, you had to make a heartbreaking decision.
Yeah, we did. So Friday the 13th was the announcement. The following Friday was, and all that everything we just talked about happened in that 7 days. You're right, and so the following Friday the 20th, we just told everyone that we have zero work, at least for the next few months. We didn't know how long it was going to last, so we had no choice but to let everyone go. And Mick and I had planned that he and I would come in and clean equipment and do whatever we need to do a couple of days a week, and so that was really a horrible day. We had 23 or so people working for us at the time that we had to tell them to take their tools and drop their keys back, and we'll be in touch when something comes up.
You called it tears and beers. What was the
A lot of
response?
both.
Yeah, what was the response like from your staff?
Well, they were heartbroken as well, you know. And the hardest thing for me is that these guys rely on us, and if we don't have anything for them, they're in trouble as well. So it's not just about us. And a lot of these people have been with us since the start. They'd grown. The business started as just myself and Tab, and then Mick soon after, and then it grew with these guys that stick around. And so that was it was a horrible day.
And in the middle of this, you have a chat with a mate on the other side of the world.
So I'd been always like with the pop-up facilities and things. We'd never stopped looking, and because we wanted to come up with an idea, we had to come up with an idea. And so I was talking to this guy over in Ireland he worked for us for a little while here in Australia, and he kicked off a great company in Ireland, and he mentioned on the Sunday, so Friday was when we did that. Sunday morning, he said, "Look, I'm looking at doing some furniture," and that's what flicked the switch. And immediately I messaged Mick and I said, "Mate, we need to make office furniture." And we had seen that there was no desks available. Officeworks was sold out and IKEA was sold out, and there was 18 to 20 week lead times from anything out of China. Nothing was coming out of China, so everything was bare for work from home office furniture. And Mick jumped straight onto it that Sunday morning, and we had a couple of messages that day, and we agreed that we'd meet the following Monday morning. And we did, and Mick came in with a plan for a desk and a stand-up desk, and that was the first prototype design. We cut them on that Monday. We actually we door knocked to try and find a nice piece of birch ply around our local industrial area because we couldn't get hold of our timber supplier, and we found a couple of sheets from a kitchen guy down the road, and so we cut those on our CNC router, put them together, and that was it. We knew that was the right decision.
How hard, though, was it to back that decision in? Because you'd almost lost your house and your livelihood. You'd tried the hospital pop-up tents. You'd thought about the home gym equipment. What kind of a gamble was it to invent IsoKing, to make these desks and hope that would work?
Well, at the time, we didn't look at it as anything different. We looked at it as another project. This is a desk, and we knew that it would work because there was nothing available, and it went together very well. It looked great, and it ticked all the boxes. So for us, we knew that was a good product, and we looked at it as another project. We have a design. What does it need to? We need to cut it on the machine. We need birch plywood to do it. And so that's all we did. We never considered that we were making a whole new business. At the time, it was just, this is what we're going to do to make ends meet.
How much did you think about the prototype for the desk? Because one of the keys to this would be that it would be easy for people to assemble.
That absolutely, and we've a very lucky coincidence for us, and this is an amazing thing, is that Mick designs furniture as a hobby. So
what?
So Mick Jessup, our head of production, he has designed and built his furniture in his house, and he is amazing at it. And so he jumped at this like a fish to water. It was almost his dream come true to actually design some furniture that was going to be used by other people. And so the thing for us was that it needed to go together quickly because everyone working from home didn't necessarily have office space. So we wanted something that needed no tools, that could be put away in the evening if you needed the space back again, and put up again in the morning. So this desk goes together in 30 seconds, and it does exactly that. There
was something else that you did that was very, very clever that made IsoKing work, which was getting customers quickly engaged with the idea. You published a bit of a letter on, I think, Instagram and Facebook. What happened?
Yeah, I wrote this letter just explaining the situation, and it wasn't a sales letter. It was telling people that we're from the event industry. We've been hit really, really, really hard, and this was something we needed to do to try and make ends meet, and it was an idea. And on the Monday when Mick and I made this desk, we also said, if we're going to do any good out of this, we need to also give back. So immediately we decided that we'd donate a portion of anything we sold to Support Act, who are the charity that looks after the event industry, live music workers, and all the people that work for us that fall through the safety nets of everything else. So we decided we wanted to donate to those guys, and that I put that in the letter and said, anything we sell, we're going to donate a portion of it. And it took off. We've never experienced anything like a viral campaign, but it did. It went viral. Within a week, it had been seen by 1 million people and shared thousands of times, and people really connected with the fact that we were open, and it was emotional. We were in all sorts of trouble, and this is what we were doing to make ends meet.
And how important is that story that you're telling, getting your customers to understand how your industry was affected, how your family and your staff were affected, tapping into the psychology of the moment where customers actually wanted to help businesses that were struggling?
It was everything. The connection with our customers and our followers is how we've grown. We wouldn't be anywhere without that, and so we've kept that throughout. It's been a real key to everything we've done, is that we would be very open, and we'd be always in contact with people and telling them, particularly if we mess up. We've learnt a lot along the way. We knew nothing about e-commerce or retail, and so we made mistakes. And straight away, if we did, I'd put another letter out and say, guys, we did this so quickly that we messed something up. Really sorry, but this is what we're going to do to fix that. And through telling people that we'd messed something up, we got better reviews and more support. It was amazing.
That idea of transparency with the customer, I think, is becoming increasingly important. I think the first desks, you sent out a couple of hundred in the initial batch, and they were a bit wobbly.
Correct. Yeah. That's right. The stand-up desks were it turned out quite wobbly. We one thing we learnt very quickly was the very small tolerances in ply. There's very small changes, and so you buy one batch of ply and it can be a point of a millimetre different, and that just made these desks wobble. And so we made a new brace to put in, very small piece that got rid of that regardless. And so we just made the decision to send that to everyone that had ever bought the desk, and we did that, and yeah, they were very thankful for it.
This is Curveball, the podcast where we talk to leaders about thriving in challenging times. Jeremy Fleming is from the staging company Stagekings, but did an amazing pivot to a new company making flat pack desks right at the time when we all needed them. More of his journey in a moment on Curveball. From Dead Set Studios, this is Curveball, a podcast about thriving in challenging times. I'm Kelly Reardon. A year ago, Jeremy Fleming was running a complex and lucrative staging business. But out of nowhere, an unprecedented event shutdown meant in just 7 days his company pretty much collapsed. Luckily, Jeremy Fleming has both the calloused hands of a scaffolder and the brain of a business leader. So across the next week, he invented a whole new business on the run. He first tried to convince hospitals that they needed pop-up waiting rooms and drive-through COVID testing tents. And then he tried to make easy-to-assemble home gym equipment. But when that didn't work, Jeremy switched ideas again and invented IsoKing. Jeremy, it's such an interesting idea as well around your adaptation, because Stagekings was very much a business-to-business structure, whereas IsoKing is selling straight to customer. How did you navigate that switch?
That's been one of the biggest learnings for us, is the B2C switch. And we it started off all through social media. That's how we got the word out. We very quickly needed to set up an e-commerce site, which is something we knew very little about. And so Tabitha, my wife, wrote that e-commerce site overnight. So we cut the desks on the Monday morning. Monday evening, we wrote the e-commerce site. And so she was watching YouTube tutorials how to set these things up. Amazing. And so she did that, and then Tuesday morning we met and took the photos of the desks and uploaded them, and by Tuesday afternoon we were on sale. So it was a very quick turnaround. And we didn't really think too much about it along the way. We were moving so fast. So the B2C change all came through the socials and the new e-commerce side. And really quickly we realised that we needed to have someone in customer service. We were selling, that first day we sold 30 odd desks, and it ramped up very quickly from there. And so we we put Nat actually in customer service, who is a Qantas first class attendant, and so she there's no one better at customer service than her.
And how did you find her? Because these are people who aren't used to making stages. These aren't people in your network.
Well, what we did, because it ramped up so quickly, we within days we were calling back everyone. We on the Wednesday, after selling these desks on Tuesday afternoon, we're going to need a lot of people back again. And so by Wednesday we had a bunch of people back, and by the end of that week we had everyone
What a roller coaster.
And then it really was. And then we were putting messages out on socials again saying, look, we need a lot more people now. Anyone from the event industry that's been affected by this, if you need work, come and have a chat to us. So we ramped up quickly with people from the event industry. We got some airline guys come through. Nat is someone we knew from the local area as well. But we ramped up quickly and threw out the net to anyone that wanted to come and help.
This sense of having a team of great people has always been very important to you. And when you first started the business, you had a bit of a pick list, as I understand it.
Yeah, I did. That's very true. I did. When I started, people that I'd worked with over the years, I'd pegged as wanting to work with them at some stage. And so Mick was running Sydney Festival for many, many years, and we had a great relationship. I was building stuff for him before, and so I always wanted to work with Mick. And now we've got Nick on as well, who's run amazing events, around the world yacht races, and we did a lot of skateboarding events and things together. And so I pegged him as wanting to work with him as well. And it really just all came together during this. All the events were all gone, and we had everyone want to come and work with us, and they've stuck around.
In terms of managing staff at the time, though, there's been a lot to deal with. Some of them had lost their jobs, then you'd brought them back. They had to do a completely different type of work with a different focus. And people are stressed about COVID at the time, and their kids are at home from school and various other things, and you're trying to scale quickly. How did you manage your people in that situation?
With everything, we've just been open and kept communication really clear. So we just were telling everybody that was coming on, this is what it is. It's not much fun. Sanding desks is not a great it's not a great thing to be doing long term, but these guys all jumped on, and I think everyone was just really happy to be working, and because of that, the vibe in the workshop and was really up, and I actually think people were pretty happy they weren't stuck at home with homeschoolers.
So IsoKing starts to take off quite quickly, which thank goodness, because you had absolutely heaps at stake in terms of the sheer scale of Stagekings and the number of people relying on you for that business. And you had a fairly fast growth strategy with Stagekings, and then IsoKing takes off quickly. How did you deal with scale and having to move really quickly?
We took it day at a time, because it all did happen so quickly, and we dealt with orders. Tabitha and I would print the orders for the day out at 10 o'clock that night was the cutoff. So we'd print them all out on individual pieces, and back it was hundreds of orders every day, and we'd fold them up and put them into a little window. So we didn't get a lot of sleep around then either. And the next day we'd make those and put the stickers on them and get them out. And so we also then had. We looked at where the orders were coming from. We pulled more event crew in to actually deliver. So we got people to bring their cars down. We loaded all their cars up, and they'd go and deliver to a specific area. So it was all just day by day at a time. And as things built up, we came up with new systems, and our guys, like you mentioned, they're all doing completely different jobs. We've got set builders now running dispatch, and carpenters that are sanding desks and doing quality control. So we very quickly came up with new systems, and we've changed things along the way and become more efficient. But It was day by day.
And how did you hire people or grab people in quickly, brief them in what you have to do while you're still trying to just deal with the orders coming in and making desks?
we really just kept throwing to the event industry, and the event industry is such an amazing community of people. They band together to help each other out, and they were just, everyone was so happy to be there, and that's actually how that initial letter spread so quickly, as the event industry got behind us and supported us, and we get them in.
It's very much a can-do industry, isn't it? Like, people solve problems on ridiculous deadlines when you're working on a big event or a show.
That's exactly it. These guys rock up to an empty field and days later are putting on a festival for 30,000 people, or taking over an empty stadium and putting on an event that no one even sees what they do behind the scenes. They just turn up and everything's done. And these guys do deal with issues all the time. And so this is what's happened with IsoKing, is it's the making furniture's something that we came up with, and everyone's jumped on board.
You mentioned earlier you're a bridge carpenter by trade. Did you always see yourself working in a field like this, or did you have an entirely different career path mapped out in your head when you were at school or university?
Yeah, I wanted to be an architect at school, and I don't really even know why. But that was something I wanted to do, and so I finished school and didn't go into that. I found this apprenticeship almost immediately after finishing school. I was only 17, and found an apprenticeship and went and became a bridge carpenter down on the south coast of New South Wales, and an amazing place to be. But that's how it all started. And while I was there, I had so many opportunities to get tickets and so licenses for things, and I just jumped at every opportunity. So I became a scaffolder and a rigger and a forklift driver, crane driver, all these different things, because the opportunity was there and I took it.
And what did you learn in your time overseas working in this field?
I learnt a lot about different ways to do things, and like I mentioned earlier, everything in Australia looked very similar. And the big thing I took from over there was how amazing you can make a structure. A scaffold doesn't need to look boring. We can dress it and make it look like anything. And so that got the creativity flowing, and that was the big thing from Europe, yeah.
A lot of successful business owners have had the benefit of, I guess, formal leadership or management training. You've had to pick it up as you go along. Where did you learn to lead a business?
Well, you're right. I haven't had much training, but I grew up around. My family was always running small businesses. My grandfather and my mother, in high school we had dry cleaning companies and mini labs developing photos, which isn't a big thing anymore. But we from the age of 11 and 12, I was working in those businesses and seeing how my grandfather and my mother ran everything, and so I really was entrenched in that from an early age.
I understand that you took your grandfather overseas with you when you were first setting up Stagekings. What happened there? He's always been my sounding board and a mentor for me. So when this opportunity came up, I called him and I said, there's a staging company in Europe that I really want to go and talk to, and it'd be great if you come. Now, he works part of his year in China, which he hasn't done for the last year, but he was in Shanghai and flew over to meet me in Amsterdam. And so as an 80, he knows more about dance parties than any 80-year-old should. But he's really quite experienced now. And so he's still around, and obviously at the age of 80, still involved in business. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, he'll never stop. I cannot imagine him not working, and he's always got great ideas, and I still bounce ideas off him. And he's very, very honest, and he'll tell me if I've got a dumb idea. He'll tell me. A lot of other people will just support me, but he'll say, "No, that's stupid." But I really
you need one of those, don't you?
You have to have that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your business partner, Tabitha, also your wife, how do you maintain your relationship, your business together, particularly over the last year when I can't imagine the stress that was placed on your family?
Yeah, we actually we work very well together. We really complement each other. A lot of people say, I could never work with my partner or my wife, but we really do. I'm extremely optimistic. Some say maybe too optimistic sometimes, but she sort of levels me out a little bit there, and we're if one of us is melting down, the other one's not, and supporting each other. It's for some reason when one of us is on, the other one, we level each other out really well. So we work very well together, and it just works.
What routines or little rituals or things do you do to keep yourself sane as a business person, especially given this ridiculous amount of pivoting and adapting that you've had to do?
I like to run. The running is what it's almost like meditation for me. So I like to get out and have a run and clear my head. That's the main thing for me. I've wanted to try meditation, and everyone tells me how good it is. But for me, that kind of is my meditation. The other thing that Tabitha and I both do every night is we shakti, we call it. It's like a bed of nails, an Indian acupressure mat.
What?
Which is it's amazing, and so we've got so many of our friends onto it. We lay on it for 20 minutes every night, and it is also meditative. It's you lay on that, and for the first couple of minutes, all you can do is think about the pain, and then it goes away, and it's this amazing wash of calmness, and it's amazing.
Hang on a minute. I've really got to know more about this. So it's a mat, like a yoga mat that you roll out, but it's got some sort of needles in it.
It's similar. It's very sharp, like plastic needles, and it's called a shakti, and it spreads over your whole back. You lay on that, and it calms you, and it just really helps us with our sleep for some reason.
Incredible. How important was it to you to give back to the industry? You mentioned earlier that you wanted to get involved with Support Act. How have you worked with them on the way that they deliver that money to people that need it?
It was one of the first things we thought of was that we wanted to give back as much as we could if we were going to do any good. And Support Act is such an amazing organisation. What they do in there is any event worker, crew, artists from the live event industry, because a lot of these guys fall through the cracks of safety nets. They don't get JobKeeper. They can't, because most people work gig to gig. It's mostly a casual freelance workforce, and so what Support Act does is they'll for example pay their rent or pay bills that they can't afford to pay or buy food. It's a really important organisation, and so we wanted to give back to those guys, and we started from the very start giving $10 from every desk that we sold to Support Act, and in the 10 months that we've been operating, we've nudged $70,000, which is amazing, and we're now trying to everything we can to hit 100,000 within the first anniversary. So it's and they continue to do a great job, because the event industry is still not coming back the way that it was. It's a long way off, and there's still a lot of people that haven't worked now in 10 months, and so it's really worthwhile.
I wondered, with those events coming back slowly, how you'll balance the two businesses. Will you move back towards Stagekings at some point, or are you just doubling down on IsoKing now?
At the moment, we're doubling down on IsoKing because the event industry is still so up in the air. It's there's little confidence until we can look at this issue as a nation and not individual states with borders shutting all the time. The event industry just has no confidence. So we are doubling down on IsoKing. We've just now, though, in the late last year, split off the IsoKing brand and made it its own brand, so that when Stagekings does come back, we'll run both.
And are you considering moving into other markets?
We are. We're working on some really exciting things, particularly in IsoKing. We're launching our at-home range on the first anniversary of IsoKing. So we're moving more into that sort of bed frames and TV cabinets and those sorts of things, which is really exciting. We're looking also more at wholesale. We're looking for wholesale partners at the moment to move more furniture out. and also licensing. We've done some licensing now in Europe, and we're looking at the States, so it's all still moving very quickly.
And do people still want flat pack desks? Because I imagine that there was a moment or a kind of a 6-month window where that was, a huge demand for that. But is that why you're moving into other products?
It is. The desk did slow up, but actually it was my grandfather that told me at the very start. He said, "Yeah, but not everyone's going to need desks forever." And I said, "Well, tell that to IKEA." It's I think they do. We're still selling a lot of them. The initial crazy burst of people wanting them has slowed up, but we keep coming up with products as well, and it's keeping going. Yeah.
Jeremy Fleming, I think Hervey Bay would be a lovely spot to live, but I am very glad that you are still living in Sydney and that you've managed to survive this. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible experience.
Thanks, Kelly. Been great to chat.
Curveballs made by the production company Dead Set Studios. This episode was produced by me, Kelly Reardon, and by our intern Hannah Kinder and Curveball co-pilot Rachel Fountain. If Jeremy and the Stagekings story has sparked memories about your own big pivot or the idea that helped turn things around for you, we'd love to hear your story. Use your phone to record a voice memo and email it to hello@deadsetstudios.com. And we'd love you to subscribe to Curveball. You can do that on apps like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or wherever you usually get your podcasts. And that way you won't miss a cracker episode like this one.
I had a flotation sort of vest on and wetsuit, and the violence of the hold down, it broke the zip open and actually exploded the wetsuit open, which if you think about it, you really do get quite violently held down and thrashed around, and it was a 20-foot wave, and it blew my wetsuit open and it filled up with water. So at that point, even though I had the flotation vest on to try and sort of help me get to the surface, I couldn't get up because it was full of water, and that was sort of holding me down. And yeah, it was intense, and you have to sort of really go to a place of, you try and stay calm and all those things, but in those moments, that was a position where I was like, well, hang on a sec, this is not good.
That's World Surf League boss Andrew Stark, who's learned a thing or two about coming back from adversity and channeling your pain into passion. That's next on Curveball, don't miss it. And the other thing you can do is once you've finished this episode is hit subscribe, and then you can go back and binge all the episodes you've missed. What are you waiting for? Get on it right now, and please share Curveball with a friend.